Hello everyone, DM Gashbad here. I was on a bit of a vacation for a while, but I'm back now. Thank you for being patient. I'm ready to get back to all of your favorite games right after we do this. It is a brand new game. This is Ghostbusters the board game by Cryptozoic Entertainment. I bought this a long time ago for my son. It's one of the few movies that I really liked that my kids also appreciated. So as a present, I got him this board game. But of course, really it was for me. I think it's got enough cool miniatures and game mechanics in it that it falls within the domain of the stuff we cover on this YouTube channel. So I finally got enough of the components painted up that I gathered up my 3 kids and we actually played a game. Here are our protagonists, the Ghostbusters, Zedmore, Venkman, Stans, and Spengler. They also get to cruise around in a scaled down Ecto-1, which you can see in the back. The models are pretty good. They have kind of a cartoony style, I think mostly based on the old Ghostbusters comics, but I think that works for this game. I don't need photorealistic Ghostbuster miniatures. Those guys are almost cartoons to begin with. The detailing is not bad. I'm actually very familiar with the Ghostbusters equipment. We did a big Ghostbusters Halloween a while ago, made my own proton pack and everything. So while they can't have all the details, what they do have is pretty good. There is a strange detail. They seem to have armbands on their right arms where the Ghostbuster patch goes. I don't know what that's all about. The Ghostbusters don't wear armbands. I just painted it to look like the rest of their uniform. Speaking of the rest of the uniform, the most difficult thing about painting these guys, the thing I was looking forward to the least, is the color of their jumpsuits. It's not really brown, it's not really gray. It looks different from shot to shot in the movie, especially depending on whether they're inside or outside. Outside it looks more tan, inside it looks more gray. And brownish gray is a color that I've always had a lot of problems with, but I found a pretty good formula that I'm very happy with, and I think when I need to do a brownish gray in the future, that's what I'm going to use. If you're curious, I mixed a dark gray charcoal with territorial beige, which is a medium beige color. That got washed with charcoal gray and then highlighted up with charcoal gray mixed with a little bit more territorial beige and then highlighted up with white. Normally I avoid highlighting things with pure white, but I think it worked out in this situation. These models are relatively small, but the details aren't that fiddly, so I think you're okay. They are unfortunately this soft plastic, which I really don't like, but it's kind of what you get in these miniature board games. I'll talk more about that when I go over the ghosts. The scale of the models is a little wonky if you're picky about that kind of thing. In reality, Winston and Ray are about the same height as the rest of the Ghostbusters, but their models are kind of hunched over, but they're still the same height as the rest of them, so they seem really large by comparison. You'd have to be pretty picky to have a problem with that, though. As a side note, all the original Ghostbusters are crazy tall. They're all over 6 feet. It's a weird cast, plus Sigourney Weaver, who's the same height as the rest of them, and then they threw in poor Rick Moranis. For this game, I'll be playing Peter Venkman. My son, who is our youngest, will be playing Egon Spengler. My oldest daughter will be playing Winston Zedmore, and the middle child, my other daughter, will be playing Ray Stans. And here are the ghosts. Technically, these aren't all the ghosts in play in this first scenario. These are just the ones that start on the board. You also have a separate spirit world, which contains 5 of each of the 3 types of ghosts. The ghosts in the spirit world can come onto the table through different means. The way you lose this scenario, in fact, is if you're required to pull a ghost onto the table from the spirit world and there are none left. That's how you lose. The thing is, after painting 10 of these ghosts, I really didn't want to paint another 15 that I may or may not use. So you'll just have to forgive the unpainted ghosts that might appear later on. I had a debate with myself whether to paint the ghosts at all. They're this translucent plastic. They look like ghosts just as they are, but they're also the same bluish color and they don't have different colored eyes or bases or anything like that. So in the end, I decided to kind of split the difference and paint the models that started on the table. We've got 3 types of ghosts to start with. The class 1s, the weakest ones, are the galloping ghouls, the blue ones up in front. The class 2s are the gruesome twosomes, they're the teal ones in the middle, and the one class 3 that we start with is called a Boogaloo Manifestation. That's the purple one in the middle, of course. These guys definitely have the vibe from the old 80s Real Ghostbusters cartoon. In fact, I thought they just designed these things specifically for this game, referencing that cartoon kind of as a visual guide. But no, actually, it's weirder than that. The Galloping Ghouls and the Gruesome Twosomes actually come directly from the Kenner Ghostbusters toy line that was produced to go with the real Ghostbusters cartoon. I just stumbled on that little bit of trivia when I was looking up the stats for them before I did this video. The main problem with these models, though, is that soft plastic makes removing mold lines and flash really, really difficult. And look at these things. They've got arms and tentacles and tongues sticking out all over. There's lots of mold lines. And the translucent plastic makes them hard to see. And the soft plastic means that if you try and file them or cut off the mold lines, there's a tendency for it to bend or just gives you all kinds of problems. So they were kind of fun to paint, but they were a pain to prep. So here is the game board all set up and ready to play. The Ecto-1 starts in the upper right corner and all the Ghostbusters are inside. You can see we have a little Ecto-1 card on the lower right and all our models are placed in there. The spirit world is in the top right with all the extra ghosts, and the painted ghosts are all spread through the table. Also on the table are 3 tiles. These are open spirit world gates. They don't use those in the Ghostbusters movies, but they do come into play in the cartoon and the video game. Ghostbusters video game was actually pretty good. I did enjoy that thing. You even go to the spirit world in one of the levels. I'm going to get distracted a lot if this is the way I'm going to do this video. Anyway, the setup for this scenario is that Slimer's escaped again and we're trying to track him down. Before we can do that though, our traps are having problems. These open gates are messing with the mechanism and it's making ghosts escape. So we got to clear that up before we go on. The goal then is to close the 3 open gates on the board. Like most problems the Ghostbusters encounter, we solve it by shooting it with a proton stream. 2 proton streams to be exact. We'll get into that as we go through the gameplay. For right now, the only thing to really bear in mind is that there are bits of terrain printed on the board. There are red lines that you can neither see through nor move through, orange lines that you can see through but not move through, and yellow lines that you can move through but not see through. So the red lines are things like walls and big barriers, yellow lines are things like vapor, and orange lines are things like low obstructions or cracks in the ground or something like that. Anyway, the way the game works is that you choose a player and that player always goes first in the turn order. And then we go clockwise around the table, each player taking a turn. And at the very end, there's a die that you roll to see what happens with the gates or the ghosts. The ghosts don't really get a turn. If you remember from that first Ghostbuster movie, mostly the ghosts are just hanging out, being ghosts, minding their own business. They really only mess with people once you start messing with them. It's kind of an interesting mechanic and one that I think fits in well with the vibe of the movie. Anyway, my son gets to go first, and so Egon Spengler is first out of the gate. Now, my son has correctly identified that Egon doesn't drive the Ecto-1. He's always a passenger. So instead of driving the car, you can do that as an action. He's going to get out. Getting out is what you call a maneuver. Every Ghostbuster can do 1 maneuver in their turn. The only 2 maneuvers are getting in or out of the Ecto-1 and transferring ghosts between Ghostbusters that you're adjacent to. So he gets out of the car as his 1 maneuver. He now has 2 actions. All the Ghostbusters start with 2 actions. For his first action, he chooses to move. When you move a Ghostbuster, you can move up to 2 squares, and you can move diagonally or orthogonally. So Egon hops up 2 squares, and there's a Galloping Ghoul right in front of him, and he decides to try and blast it. To zap a ghost, it's real easy. You just roll a single d6. All the ghosts have a number that you need to hit them. The Galloping Ghouls are the weakest of the lot. They only need a 3+. Egon promptly rolls a 3+ like the boss he is, and so the ghost gets a capture stream on him. Galloping Ghouls, being the scrubs that they are, get captured if you have just 1 capture stream on them, so the Galloping Ghoul is immediately trapped by Egon, gets sucked right into his trap. Egon gets 1 experience point for that. Yet this game has experience points. As you go up levels and get more abilities. Bear in mind that if this was a more powerful ghost, then it wouldn't be trapped right away, but the proton stream would stay on him. It would stay on him so long as it's within range, and all the Ghostbusters can see 3 squares, and in line of sight, so nothing else like other ghosts or terrain is blocking them. The Gruesome Twosomes need 2 capture streams to trap them, and the Boogaloo manifestation requires 3. In addition, each of the ghosts has a reaction to when you attack it. In the case of the Galloping Ghoul, if Egon had missed, the ghoul would have taken off 2 squares in a random direction. Since he hit and trapped the ghost, what happens is that every square adjacent to the ghost gets slimed. If you're a Ghostbuster in one of those squares and you get slimed, then it stays with you. You lose one of your actions until someone cleans it off. It's a real pain. But since Egon wasn't adjacent to the ghost, that doesn't come into effect. The ghost is just stuck in his little box, and we move on to the next player, which is Ray Stans. Ray stands at the driver's wheel of the Ecto-1, so he decides to cruise it forward to get into the action. The Ecto-1 can move up to 6 squares, can't move diagonally though. Otherwise, follows pretty much all the same rules as moving a Ghostbuster. So up goes the Ecto for Ray's first action, and then he uses his maneuver to get out of the car. That puts Ray within range of the next Galloping Ghoul, and so he throws a capture stream on it, rolls the 3+, captures the ghoul, doesn't get slimed because he's not adjacent to it, gets himself an XP, and has another one in the box. So when Ray gets out of the Ecto-1, Winston takes over. He peels the Ecto around a corner and hops out himself. You may be wondering why we're going this way. Well, there's this big fence on the north side of that park area, and so we have to go around kind of counterclockwise. That's okay, there's plenty of stuff to do. Winston decides he's going to focus on the mission, and so actually throws a capture stream on the gate, the open gate in the upper left. Or at least he would have. The gate needs a 4+ to hit, and Winston misses. Just like ghosts, gates can have reactions to being attacked. In this case, if you miss a gate, a ghost from the spirit world pops out, and you choose a random direction for it to come out from. We're always going to start with the lowest class of ghosts if possible, so a Galloping Ghoul comes out from the spirit world and hangs out on the left side of the gate. With that, Winston's 2 actions are done, and so we're on to the last Ghostbuster in the turn order. That's me, Pete Venkman. Pete gets out of the car for his maneuver, and he decides to take aim at the ghoul that just escaped from the gate. The Ecto-1 and the Ghostbusters don't block line of sight, so he can make that shot. He manages to roll the 3+ to trap the ghost, so he gets himself an experience point. And for Venkman's second action, he decides to pop the trapped ghost into the Ecto-1's dimensionometer. So instead of carrying it around in the little box, he's going to drop it into the doohickey on the car, and that's going to send the ghost back to the spirit world. That's useful for a couple reasons. Number 1, the more ghosts you have in the spirit world, the less likely it is that you're going to run out and lose the scenario. Number 2, like I said, our traps are malfunctioning, so there is the possibility that our trapped ghosts will escape. With that, all the Ghostbusters have taken a turn, so it's now time to roll the special Ghostbuster die at the end. The Ghostbuster die is a 6-sided die, and 5 of its faces correspond to a symbol on each of the gates, the 3 open and the 2 closed gates. The closed gates are those blacked out squares with the Ghostbuster symbol on them. The 6th symbol is the Chaos symbol, and of course it's actually the Warhammer 8-pointed star Chaos symbol. I guess that's now just the universal symbol for chaos. That is in fact the face that we roll, so when that happens, all the ghosts that can see your Ghostbusters, they also see 3 squares, get to react as if they were missed by a proton stream by the closest Ghostbuster. The good news is that currently there are only 2 ghosts that can see us. There's the Gruesome Twosome right by Pete Venkman, and there's a Galloping Ghoul kind of on the other side of the fence who can also see Pete. So as I said before, when a Galloping Ghoul is missed, its reaction is to run 2 squares in a random direction. In this case, it runs straight north, and ghosts can go straight through obstacles. So it just pops through that fence on the north. The Gruesome Twosome is a little bit more dangerous. When it's missed by a proton stream, it moves 1 square directly towards the Ghostbuster that missed it, and then it moves another random square. So it goes straight into contact with Venkman. When a ghost contacts a Ghostbuster, it doesn't do damage. They don't actually hurt you. Instead, as I said before, you get slimed. So, Venkman gets a slime counter on him, he's down 1 action, and the ghost moves a final random square to the north, ending up right in the middle of us. Hopefully that all made sense because we're moving on. It's round 2, back to Egon. Egon got left behind a little bit, so he takes his first action to move 2 squares back towards the rest of the Ghostbusters, but then that does put him within range of that Galloping Ghoul that just popped through the fence, so he takes aim at that, rolls a 3+, captures the ghost, gets himself an XP, and it's getting a little crowded in Egon's ghost trap. Ray goes next. He's got a gruesome twosome right in front of him, and so he takes aim at that and tries to throw a capture stream on it. Remember, the twosomes need 2 streams before you can trap it. They're also harder to hit. You need a 4+ instead of a 3+, and so Ray misses. And as we said before, when a twosome is missed, it goes 1 square directly towards the Ghostbuster that tried to shoot it, which in this case is Ray. Ray is right there. The twosome lands on Ray's spot, passes straight through him, slimes him, and then moves 1 more square to the right. Normally, Ray would have 2 actions, but he just got slimed. When you're slimed, you're down in action, so his turn is over. We're back to Winston. Winston moves over to Ray to give him a little bit of support. It is more efficient to have a friend clean the slime off of you than to do it yourself. So I think that's what Winston's got in mind for later turns. Anyway, as he backs up, he fires a capture stream at the gate, and this time he hits, so he puts a capture stream on it. A gate in this scenario needs 2 capture streams on it to close it. You flip it over onto the black side with the Ghostbusters logo on it. The gate doesn't have a reaction for when it's hit, so we move on to Venkman. Appreciating the good work that Zedmore just did, he also tries to shoot the gate and also rolls that 4+ to hit it. So now there are 2 capture streams on the gate, which means that it gets closed. Each of the Ghostbusters with the capture stream on it gets an experience point. And with little else to do, Pete just gets back in the Ecto-1, getting ready to move on down the rest of the map. So end of the second turn, time to roll the Ghostbuster die, and we roll the chaos symbol again. Kids just like chaos. Anyway, the only ghost in line of sight this time is that twosome that's been sliming its way through the rest of the group. The ghost decides to go after Egon, moving down and sliming him. So now it's the Ghostbuster turn again. As always, we start off with Egon. He's down to just 1 action because of that slime, but he still decides to try and bust some ghosts. He's going to take a shot at that twosome, but he misses. Can't roll the 4+, so it goes back to him, slimes him again. That's bad news. Now Egon has 2 slime counters on him. He gets no actions. The only thing that he can do is spend his entire turn cleaning off 1 slime token. But that's for later. The ghost gets a final random movement and ends up between Ray and Egon. Speaking of Ray, he's up next. He also gets only 1 action because of the slime, and he also decides to take a shot at the twosome. This time, though, Ray hits, and so he puts a capture stream on it. Again, the twosome needs 2 capture streams in order to catch it in a ghost trap. Unfortunately, this is where I make a mistake. I don't realize until after the game that the gruesome twosomes have a reaction for when they are hit. The galloping ghouls, of course, don't have reactions for when they're hit because as soon as they're hit, they're trapped. They get a reaction for when they're trapped. So I didn't even think to look at the reaction for the gruesome twosomes. The way it's supposed to work is that when you put a capture stream on a gruesome twosome, it takes 1 square of movement directly towards the Ghostbuster that zapped it. So what it should have done is gone into Ray's space, come out the other side, and put another slime token on him. I don't think this mistake is really going to make that much of a difference. Honestly, this is kind of a training scenario. It'd be kind of hard to fail it. It means we'd have to take more time cleaning slime off of people and chasing down ghosts, but we'll get it right the next time. I don't think it really matters for now. Anyway, Winston's up next, and he has 2 actions because he's got no slime. He spends 1 action to take a slime token off of an adjacent Ghostbuster. In this case, it's Ray. So Ray's back up to fight in shape, and Winston still has a second action. He uses that to attack that gruesome twosome, and again he misses. This time the twosome goes straight through Winston, gives him a slime token, and ends up at the top of the map. Alright, Venkman's up next, and it hasn't been going as great as he thought it would. He thought these guys would sort out the remaining ghost over here, but it's causing him more problems than he expected, so he drives back in the Ecto-1, remember he started his turn in the car, and he hops out to the north. He then spends an action to take a slime token off of Egon, who's not having a great day. With all the Ghostbusters having gone, it's time to roll the Ghostbuster die, and this time we roll a circle. And the circle corresponds to the open gate in the lower left. So, when you roll the symbol of a gate, a new ghost pops out of there from the spirit world. So we grab ourselves a galloping ghoul, it ends up in the upper right, and we move on. Egon is up and he is tired of walking, so he takes one movement action to get to the side of the Ecto-1 and then uses his maneuver to get in. He only gets one action because he still has a slime token on him, and you can't directly get into the Ecto-1 from the back or the front. You have to be on one of the side squares. Ray is up next. For his first action, he takes a slime token off of Winston. Each of the Ghostbusters has a special way that they gain experience in addition to closing gates and busting ghosts. For Ray, he gets an experience point every time he takes a slime counter off of someone else. For his second action, he takes a shot at that gruesome twosome, and this time he hits. So now he's got 2 capture streams on the twosome. That means that the ghost is trapped. It doesn't have a reaction for when it gets trapped. It just goes into the ghost trap. Since Ray had 2 capture streams on the gruesome twosome, he gets 2 experience points. That combined with the 1 experience point he got for taking a slime token off of Winston means that he got 3 XP this round. Pretty good. But he's not done. He still has a maneuver that he can do. He could use it to get in the Ecto-1, but instead he uses it to transfer the ghost that he has. He has a gruesome twosome and a galloping ghoul in his trap, and he's going to hand them to Winston. And it being Winston's turn right now, we'll see why the reason for that is Winston's special bonus XP condition is he gets an experience point every time he drops 3 levels or more of ghosts into the Ecto-1. So he's got 3 levels that Ray just handed him. He drops them into the Ecto-1 for his first action, gets himself his XP. Then he just gets into the car. On his turn, Venkman hops into the Ecto-1 as well, and he takes a drive action to haul the 3 Ghostbusters in there down the road. So it's time for the Ghostbuster die at the end of the round, and this time we roll a symbol that corresponds to one of the closed gates. When that happens in this scenario, each Ghostbuster loses one of their trapped ghosts. Now, the good news is because Winston dropped a bunch of ghosts into the Ecto just now, the only person still hauling around a ghost is Egon. And so one of the galloping ghouls escapes to the south of the Ecto. Back to the Ghostbuster turn, Egon goes first. He hops out of the car for a maneuver and then takes a shot at that open circle gate in the lower left. Unfortunately, he misses and a new galloping ghoul pops out in the corner. If you're curious, Egon gets an experience point every time he rolls a 1 to hit. Kind of a learning from your mistakes sort of thing, scientific method. Ray missed his ride, so on his turn he just takes 2 move actions to get further down that left-hand side of the table. On his turn, Winston Zedmore gets out of the opposite side of the Ecto-1 and traps a galloping ghoul that was hanging out in the center of the table. And on Venkman's turn, he also gets out of the Ecto-1. He takes an action to take a slime token off of Egon, and then shoots at the gate but misses, so a 3rd ghoul emerges, and they've almost completely surrounded Pete. Not the best position to be in, especially considering that when you trap one of those guys, they slime everyone in an adjacent square. He also can't move to the south. In order to move diagonally, you have to have one of the squares next to your diagonal line open. It can't be blocked by a ghost or a piece of terrain that you can't cross. And the Ghostbuster die rolls up another one of those closed gates, which means that Winston and Egon both lose another one of their ghosts. Even worse, they both end up in the same square on the back of the Ecto-1 there. And here's another special thing about this game. When 2 galloping ghouls end up in the same square, they join together and become a gruesome twosome. This can be a little annoying because the ghouls aren't returned to the spirit world. They're actually taken off of the game entirely, and the gruesome twosome comes on from off the table as well. So this is reducing the number of ghosts that can populate the spirit world. Back to the Ghostbusters and Egon. Egon moves off to the left and takes another shot at that circle gate and again misses, producing yet another galloping ghoul. Getting kind of crowded on this table. Ray's up next. He moves forward and finally puts a capture stream on that circle gate. Winston takes a shot at the ghoul directly in front of the Ecto-1. He hits and captures the ghost. It does slime Venkman on its way out though. For his second action, Zedmore could have put the ghost into the spiritometer and the Ecto-1 sent him back to the spirit world, but he'd really rather have 3 levels of ghost before he does that so that he can get the XP point, so instead he just moves to the south. Venkman only has 1 action because of the slime token. He decides to go ahead and shoot the ghoul right in front of him. It will slime him again, but that's okay. Venkman's special XP condition is that he gets an XP every time he is slimed on his turn. So best case scenario, he hits the ghost, gets an XP for trapping him, and then gets slimed, getting another XP. That all falls apart if he misses, which he did. The ghoul runs away to the southeast, but at least it clears up that area a little bit. Back to the Ghostbuster die, and we roll up another closed gate, which means Winston loses his ghost again and ends up on the hood of the Ecto. Can't get in the car when there are ghosts in it. New round and over to Egon. He takes a shot at that circle gate and manages to roll the 4+, meaning he and Ray get an XP point and the gate is closed. This is good because it's less likely that new ghosts are going to emerge, but it's also making it real likely that on any given round, the ghosts that we have trapped are going to escape. Ray actually has enough experience points at this point that he is level 2, and his new ability at level 2 is that he can take a free action, so not an action, not a maneuver, he can just do it for free once a round and remove a slime token from himself. Real good. But it's still Egon's turn. He still has another action. He uses it to take a shot at the ghoul in the southwest. He misses and the ghoul just runs off the table. So the Ghostbusters can't leave the board, but the ghosts can. It's not necessarily a terrible thing. It means you don't have to deal with them, but they don't go back to the spirit world, so it does reduce that pool. On the other hand, they're probably just going to go running off into New York, and eventually someone's going to have to pay us to go catch them, so I guess it all works out. Ray's up next. He traps the ghost above the newly closed gate, gets himself another XP, but it blows a bunch of slime on Egon and Venkman, not that Ray cares. Ray could have taken his next action to clean some of that slime off of Egon, given him 2 actions back, and also got himself an XP, but for some reason he doesn't. He's got something else in mind and just moves 1 square to the south. Winston's up next. He takes a shot at the closest ghoul in the south, but he misses, and it runs off directly south and runs straight into another galloping ghoul. And of course, when that happens, they squish together and make themselves a gruesome twosome. That's not great, but Winston's undeterred. He goes ahead and fires a shot at the twosome, and this time he hits. And again, the twosome should have had a reaction when it gets hit by a capture stream. It should have moved 1 square towards Winston, but we didn't do that, oh well. Finally, back to Venkman. Venkman has 2 slime counters on him, so all he can do is spend his entire round taking off 1 counter. Back to the Ghostbuster die, and again we roll up a closed gate, so Ray's ghoul escapes from his trap. Egon's turn, and he takes a shot at the gruesome twosome on the top of the Ecto-1. We may need to go drive that car at some point. He manages to put a capture stream on him, which is great. The twosome should have moved forward again, but I didn't realize that. And that's it for Egon's turn because he's got a slime counter. Ray is up next, and he blasts the galloping ghoul directly in front of him. That gets him an XP, traps another ghost, although I think it's just going to escape again. It does slime both Ray and Egon, so Egon's got 2 slime counters on him, but not to worry, because Ray can, for free, take a slime counter off of himself, and then for his second action, because he doesn't have any slime counters on him, he's still got 2 actions, he goes and removes a slime counter from Egon and gets another XP point for that. Early game, Ray's abilities are really good. At least in this game, he has gone up in experience points a lot faster than the rest of us, and it is really useful to remove those slime counters and keep getting your actions. Not that I'm complaining, but it's kind of the opposite of Venkman, who in order to get XP points with his special conditions has to actually lose actions. But Winston is up next, and he goes ahead and blasts the galloping ghoul on the hood of the Ecto. He manages to hit it. It does throw a bunch of slime on both he and Venkman. Venkman's got 2 slime counters again. I am not catching a break here. With that capture, Winston has actually gotten enough XP to go up to level 2 himself. And when he goes up to level 2, he can now deposit ghosts in the Ecto for free. Not only that, he doesn't have to be adjacent to it. He just has to be able to see it. My oldest daughter is getting a little tired of us continually losing our ghosts. She's a little more goal-oriented than the rest of them. So she immediately uses her new ability to dump the galloping ghoul into the Ecto, doesn't want to see it escape again. She obviously would have preferred to have had 3 levels of ghosts to get herself that XP, but sometimes you just got to get stuff sorted. As per usual, Venkman has 2 slime counters, so he just spends his whole turn removing 1. And sure enough, end of the round, Ray loses his ghost again. He's farming a lot of XP capturing this thing, but it's not getting us to the goal here. Over to Egon. Egon manages to zap the gruesome twosome on the back of the Ecto. That gets him a nice 2 XP. He may have been level 2 before, but he certainly is now. Now that he's level 2, he gets to reroll 1s when he fires a proton stream. That's very cool. However, he only gets his XP if he ends up with a 1 at the end of his attack action. So this actually makes it less likely that he'll gain his special XP condition. Ray again traps the ghost that just escaped from his trap, captures it again, it slimes both he and Egon. He removes his own slime for free, removes Egon's slime with a second action, getting him another XP. He's farming a ton of XP, but just not making any real progress. On his turn, Winston removes a slime counter from himself and waits for the rest of the Ghostbusters to get their act together. And Venkman is feeling like he's falling way behind in the experience points department, so he goes ahead and zaps the ghost standing right next to him. I know it's gonna slime both me and Egon. We're both gonna have 2 slime counters, but whatever, it gets me 2 XP, 1 for capturing the ghost and 1 for getting slimed on my turn. And of course, as I suspected, the Ghostbuster die comes up on a closed gate, and so Egon, Pete, and Ray all lose their Galloping Ghouls ghosts. Ray's has had enough of getting captured and escaping and getting recaptured, and escapes behind him and takes off into the night. Egon is up next and isn't very pleased that he has to spend his whole round taking off a slime token. On his turn, Ray helps him out a little bit. He removes another slime token from Egon. That actually brings Ray up to level 3, so he gets a 3rd action. So now he takes a double move and goes all the way to the south. Looks like he's going to try and hunt down that gruesome twosome at the bottom there. Winston again is a little tired of waiting for people, gets in the car and tries to subtly hint that it's time to go by driving up over to everyone. And again, Pete wipes some of the slime off of his face so he can see. Ghostbuster die comes up with another closed gate, but jokes on it this time because none of us have any trapped ghosts to lose. Back over to Egon, who backs away from the Galloping Ghoul next to the Ecto-1. He zaps it, traps it, and it slimes Venkman and the Ecto-1. When the Ecto-1 gets slimed, everyone in the car gets slimed, so Winston takes a slime counter as well. Thanks, Egon. Ray takes a couple shots at that gruesome twosome in the corner. Looks like when all is said and done, it ends up in the south there after some misses, but he does have a capture stream on it. Winston stays in the car and angrily scrubs the slime off of himself. Shouldn't have left the windows down. And Venkman also doesn't have a choice but to wipe off more of the slime. A closed gate is rolled again, and sure enough, Egon loses his ghost. Gotta get those into Ecto, man. New round, Egon moves away. He doesn't want to be adjacent to the ghost when he fires at it because he doesn't want to get slimed. Shoots it, captures it, gets an XP, but it brings him even further away from where he has to deposit this thing. Ray takes a shot at the gruesome twosome south of him. He misses, it moves through him, gets him all slimed. He uses his special ability to remove a slime token for free, so he still has a second action. Shoots again, misses again, gets slimed again. Winston is just waiting in the car, irritably drumming his fingers. Hey, Venkman actually gets an action this round. He uses it to zap the gruesome twosome, putting a capture stream on it. Again, it should have moved into Venkman and out the other side. Would have slimed Pete, but he also would have gotten XP for it. And in a shocking turn of events, we don't roll a closed gate at the end of the round. We roll an open one, so a new Galloping Ghoul pops out of there. And you're going to have to really forgive me on this one. I have no idea what's going on in this picture. It would have been Egon's turn. Somehow the gruesome twosome has moved its position up a little bit, but Egon is remaining the same. I don't understand how all that came to be because he shouldn't have been able to draw a line of sight to the gruesome twosome through that yellow barrier that he's behind. We might have made a mistake, or it might have been some weird sequence that I don't understand. I just don't know. Anyway, Ray's up next. He uses his free ability to remove a slime token from himself. He takes a shot at that twosome that's just been dancing around him. He misses again. The twosome passes through him, slimes him again, and then moves straight through the fence. So now that Ray can't see the ghost anymore because of that red barrier, can't maintain the capture stream. Alright, the rest of the Ghostbusters aren't taking the hint and moving fast enough for Winston. He drives the car over to the right, maybe that'll get people going, gets out, and takes an action to take a slime token off of Venkman. And Venkman gets 2 actions this round. He's absolutely thrilled. He fires another capture stream at the gruesome twosome, manages to get the second stream on him, captures him. That's great, 2 XP for Venkman. He goes up to level 2 finally. His special ability is not great, really. On his turn, if a ghost slimes an adjacent Ghostbuster, he can swap places with that Ghostbuster and get slimed instead. It's kind of a weird sequence of events that has to happen in order for that to take place, and he does get slimed, losing an action. He will gain an XP, but it kind of seems like an un-Venkman thing to do. Seems like he's the kind of guy who's much more likely to throw someone else in the way of an onrushing ghost. Anyway, end of the round, and yeah, we roll another closed gate. Venkman's gruesome twosome escapes, the thing that we spent all this time trying to capture. I think we also forget that Egon is carrying around a galloping ghoul. It should have escaped at this time, but I think we just forgot about it. Egon is up next, moves over to the right and takes a shot at that twosome that just escaped Venkman's ghost trap. Misses, unfortunately. However, I think this is the time where he rolls a 1 to hit, and so he gets to re-roll because of his special ability, and manages to roll another 1. So he does get that bonus XP after all. Anyway, the twosome stumbles around a bit and ends up there. Ray's turn is next. He de-slimes himself, shoots at that twosome as well, manages to do some missing, but does put 1 stream on him in the end. Winston takes a shot at the gruesome twosome in the south. He chases him to the west, but he does put a capture stream on him. Venkman is able to recapture the twosome. Tired of messing around with this guy, drops him straight into the Ecto's spiritometer. And at the end of the round, we roll another closed gate, and this time we remember that Egon has that galloping ghoul which escapes to the north. Next round, and Egon moves south to try and trap that ghost that Ray and Winston have been chasing around. He misses, and it continues to dance around, just barely staying in range of Winston's capture stream. Ray finally catches a break, puts the second capture stream on the ghost, XP for him and for Winston. Still has 2 actions left, moves over to the Ecto and uses his maneuver to hand the ghost to Winston. On his turn, Winston would really like to capture that ghoul that escaped from Egon's trap. That would give him 3 levels of ghost that he could deposit into the Ecto, get himself another XP. Unfortunately, he misses the ghost. It runs off to the left. Still bird in the hand and all that. He drops the gruesome twosome back into the spirit world and then gets into the car. Drives off to the right and that last open gate. That leaves Venkman to follow on foot, just takes his 2 move actions over to the right. The Ghostbuster die comes up with another closed gate, but again, there are no ghosts and traps to escape, so we're on to the next round. Egon double moves to catch up with the rest of the guys. Ray also double moves, but since he's level 3, he has an action at the end of that. He takes a shot at the open gate and manages to hit and put a stream on it. Finally, Winston's patience is at an end. He gets out of the Ecto and takes a shot at that open gate as well. Hits it. That's the second stream on the last open gate. It gets closed, and the victory conditions are completed. So I'm going to be honest, that took a lot longer than I thought it would. I think there was a lot of inefficiency going on with ghosts getting caught and then popping out. We could have completed this a lot faster. On the other hand, we could have also taken even longer. There's no time limit in this scenario, so we could have just caught and released ghosts all day and really driven up our XP totals for the next scenarios, because we keep our XP going into Slimer Situation Scenario 2. We did pretty well for ourselves. 3 of our Ghostbusters are at level 2, and of course Ray's at level 3. I think Egon is 1 XP away from going up to level 3 himself. Venkman, of course, is lagging behind, as you would expect. I think I like the game, and I definitely want to try it again. My son is 9, so the game is fantastic when he's doing well and capturing a lot of ghosts, and it's terrible when he gets slimed and he can't do anything else. My middle child seemed to really enjoy it. And my oldest, well, if she did like it, I'd be the last person that she would tell. So I think overall it was probably a positive experience. We'll definitely do this again, although not in the short term. Leave a comment below if you have any questions, observations, or concerns, and I will see you on the next one.